We love college football. That's why we're here at the Voice of College Football on a Monday night as we get you all set for the rest of the week and a week 9 of college football. So I will just kind of sit, wait, let everyone gather around as we talk college football tonight. So here's the drill on the Voice of College Football and our one of many call-in shows as we do throughout the week. I set this up because I would like to respond to the many comments that have come in. 286 to the top 25 that actually makes sense. And I'm going to respond to some of these comments. And no, I have not filtered these, or I have not screened these. I'm just going to have to kind of pick and choose and go to the comments that obviously are critical, interesting, insightful, all those things. And so we're going to spend some time looking at the top 25 that actually makes sense and the responses to them. And then we're going to open up the phone lines here at the Voice of College Football. Appreciate everybody being here. I will respond to your comments and your questions. As always, week 8's in the books. If you want our take on week 8, certainly check out the live stream from Saturday late night. And I'm always appreciative of everyone who chimes in and contributes in a number of ways. Super Chat's on. You can also contribute at Venmo, PayPal, and Cash App. Just search MarkRogersTV, hit the like button, do all those good deeds. All right, top 25 that actually makes sense. Hopefully you've watched it because I'm not going to run down the top 25. I'm going to look at these comments that are coming in here. They're amusing, they're interesting, they're pathetic, they're all sorts of different things. People are, this particular week, especially critical of the placement of Oklahoma as the number 2 team in the country. And I certainly had, so what's interesting is that, again, I think many of us, we have a certain viewpoint of a team and it just doesn't change much. So most people thought Oklahoma was a top 5 team in the country when the season started. They played nowhere close to top 5 level for the first several weeks of the season, and maybe even up until this point. But keep in mind, so while they were not playing at anywhere close to a top 5 level, the polls would still rank them in the top 5 because they're Oklahoma and they're supposed to be in the top 5. So while they're beating Tulane by 5 and beating Nebraska by a touchdown and beating West Virginia on a last-second field goal, everybody's ranking Oklahoma in the top 5 or 6 in the country, except for this kid. I'm ranking them more appropriately, unranked for most of that time, and then finally broke them into the rankings around 18, again, based on the resume. So what's happening here is that people continue to be unimpressed with Oklahoma's narrow wins, but they keep winning. So my rankings are based first and foremost on wins versus losses. If you continue to win, and especially if you're playing a Power 5 schedule, so they have played and beaten Nebraska, West Virginia, Kansas State, Texas, and others. So while you continue to do that, what's going on, what's happening, this doesn't happen in a vacuum, does not happen in a silo. Everybody affects everybody else. So while Oklahoma continues to rack up wins, hardly anybody else in the country is racking up wins. The only teams that are racking up wins right now and no losses are, of course, Oklahoma, Georgia, Michigan, Michigan State, Wake Forest. That's it in the Power 5. Cincinnati's in the mix, of course. I've got them ranked high. But as they continue to play, their schedule is going to go worse, 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 worse. It's going to continue to deteriorate. Also consider that I'm ranking these teams because the resume changes, not just because they are playing another game that week, but everybody that they just played, everybody that's already on the schedule, their evaluation's changing constantly, right? So the real MVP says, this is the first time that I've watched this video and I've had a major disagreement. I don't understand how Oklahoma is number 2 in the country. I gave some slack with their ranking last week because Oklahoma had Caleb Williams, blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to read the entire comment. Look at Michigan and Michigan State's resumes. They're undefeated, so I'm going to rank them highly. Michigan beat a pretty good Wisconsin team who most responses to the Wisconsin win to my channel was that Wisconsin's garbage. Now they're starting to get a little bit more respect. And also that Michigan State has yet to beat a team with a winning record. They have not beaten a team with a winning record. Oklahoma's schedule to date is decidedly better than Michigan State's. And Michigan State slopped around against Indiana. They weren't dominant against Miami. I was a 3-point lead until late, halfway through the fourth quarter. Big German says, Mark, you are the absolute best at doing the national rankings. Go green, go Spartans, beat the Wolverines this weekend. So either this individual, Big German, is happy with the rankings, or he's happy that I ranked Michigan State number, whatever they are, 3. So he's basically looking at that. That's always the funny thing too, is that people are happy about where I rank their particular team until I rank them differently than they think. So I go from being really smart to really dumb a couple weeks later. So again, people are concerned with Oklahoma being number 2 in the country. Compare Oklahoma's resume, compare their wins to Michigan's wins, Michigan State's wins, and Cincinnati's wins. All of them, not just the best team that they beat. The Cincinnati backers grabbed the Notre Dame game. And I don't know who the Michigan State people are grabbing in terms of a win. Now Michigan can kind of start to say that Wisconsin game's looking pretty good, but that wasn't the case the entire season. Oklahoma has a little bit better wins. Not a lot. Understand that the space between number 2 and 7 might be that much. Might be that much. Also, we don't have teams that elevate to certain rankings and then they don't lose that ranking because they don't lose. If your resume, if you're not performing well and other teams are beating better teams than you, then you can be displaced. It's not a race to grab a position in a poll and then hang on to it. That's been our history of rankings in college football, has been teams starting in the preseason. And then if certain teams falter and drop, then other teams, if you can grab a ranking, high ranking, and you can keep it, you keep it. Even if there are teams below you who are outperforming you and who are beating better teams. I understand that the Ohio State ranking is a bit controversial right now. I get that. But I am staying true to the head-to-head with the same record. So, of course, I have a number of people that waste their comments by bringing up Stanford beat Oregon, so they should be ranked higher. Okay. With the same record. I may even consider, in certain cases, acknowledging a head-to-head even when the winning team has a 1-game worse record. But certainly when they get the same record. And Ohio State's resume to date is not overwhelming by any stretch. Their margin of victory, their wins the last 3 outings, don't even count Akron. Come on. The last 3 outings have been impressive. And I just released my Big Ten power rankings. So that's kind of a different look at it. Those are just basically, I think those are the 14 teams in the Big Ten and how they are ranked. Best to worst. This is not best to worst. This is a resume. This is the way I believe the team should be ranked. If we were going by rankings in the Big Ten based on resume, I don't believe Ohio State would be number 1. They might be number 1 at this point now that Iowa's dropped Penn State and Iowa had better resumes because they had played better teams. But now that they've lost games, Michigan and Michigan State's resumes are not that strong. Michigan's beaten one team with a winning record, correct? Wisconsin in Power 5 play. And the Western Michigan game looks pretty good for them right now for that kind of win. So APEP Jones says the obsession with keeping Oregon ahead of Ohio State made sense until Oregon lost to Stanford. So he was okay with that as long as Oregon was undefeated and Ohio State had a loss and Oregon beat Ohio State. But as soon as Oregon lost a game, Oregon was not allowed to lose a game. Ohio State was allowed to lose a game. Oregon was not. WC Lawrence says, I'm a Michigan Wolverines fan, and I wish I was confident that they deserved a number 3 ranking. I don't think Michigan's the number 3 team in the country in terms of how good they are. I think they're a top 10 to 15 team in the country. I think Georgia's the best team in the country, clearly. And I would have a difficulty right now determining whether Alabama or Ohio State was the second best team in the country. I think Georgia's here. They have been consistently dominant on the defensive side of the ball and explosive and efficient on the offensive side of the ball. They've just been, it's hard to be critical of anything Georgia's done through 7 games. And they've beaten some good teams. Kentucky, Arkansas, Clemson, good teams, quality teams, not great teams, quality teams. So Georgia's just, based on resume, they're just far and away the number 1 team in the country. Now, after that, if you're just looking at who's playing the best and who I believe is the best, based on what I know about college football, and the talent usually wins out if it's coached and developed well, that Alabama and Ohio State are the second and third best teams in the country in some order. But it's close. And then after that, boy, we get a lot of teams out there. I got to be proven that Michigan State's good. I think Michigan's good. I don't know that they're that good. Because if you took the Michigan team of 2015 through 19 and they played this schedule against these teams, they'd be undefeated too. The 2015, 16, 17, 18, 19 teams, who are they going to lose to? So Michigan being 7-0 right now is good for them that they haven't tripped up. But Harbaugh's first 5 teams would have all been 7-0 right now as well. They have just played bad football teams. And one good football team that was really struggling on offense in Wisconsin. And credit to them, they won the game. Now, okay, they got 3 major games they got to deal with. Plus Michigan, who did they play in the West? They've got Iowa out of, or Wisconsin out of the way. Northwestern's out of the way. And Nebraska. So they played their Western Division games. I think they're going to have no issues with anybody in the East. Maybe Indiana. Look at Indiana. They're an interesting barometer here. A couple of weeks ago, they took Michigan State to the wire, and they got obliterated by Ohio State. 44 points in the first half. The recent results lead me to believe that what's going to happen the rest of this season is that Ohio State is going to kill everyone except maybe one team. And the fate of their season is going to come down to whether that one team that challenges them, Penn State, Michigan, Michigan State, maybe Purdue, the one team that challenges them, will they stand up to the challenge, do what they need to do in the fourth quarter, make the plays, win the game, and survive the scare? That's my guess. That's my guesstimation on Ohio State the rest of the year. They're going to solidly, if not in blowout fashion, beat everyone, but there's going to be one serious challenge to them. And they may have, let's say, Michigan State shock them. Or in that one quarter of play in the fourth quarter, their season's going to come down to, and their playoff hopes is going to come down to, or it may be Iowa/Wisconsin in the Big Ten championship game. Their season is going to come down to the one team that challenges them. And I think it's only going to be 1 to 2 seriously, like nail biter fourth quarter late. Will they make the plays? Otherwise, they still may be the best team in the Big Ten, but they got tripped up and they don't win the championship or get to the college football playoff. Yes, people are up in arms about Oklahoma being number 2. And I feel bad when somebody writes like paragraphs and expects me to comment to that. There's no way I'm going to read you paragraphs. There's no way I'm reading paragraphs. Just too much there, or I will not be producing videos. Niles Mouser says, actually makes sense. Question mark, question mark. Again, not even close. This time by your own standard. So when people criticize, I would at least like them to explain. But many times they just criticize and then they move on. Tony Jackson's letting me know that he remembers that I picked Georgia in my way too early top 25 as number 1. I should go back and look at those comments. Brent says, I love the rankings. Matthew, I still think Alabama and Ohio State are easily equivalent to Georgia. Let's get a banner up here. Want to remind everyone that we need sponsors here at the Voice of College Football. So if you've got any ideas, any connections to sponsors, that's the real point there. Everybody has ideas. Connections to sponsors, whether that's a business you own or know of someone who may sponsor, please let me know at MarkRogersTV@gmail.com. You can always contact me at MarkRogersTV@gmail.com. It's amusing, but sometimes it's a bit tiring why people make comments about my placement of Ohio State. Since the first time I did this, there have been times, just like with every other team in the nation, that I've ranked Ohio State higher than other people, and many times that I've ranked them lower than other people. It's a resume ranking. Des says, I'm a Michigan fan who watches this show on a regular basis. I appreciate that, Des. So I don't understand why you are sandbagging on your own team so bad. Emotional hedge, perhaps? Wow, you just don't get it, do you? I don't live through my rankings. I'm not emotionally attached to the rankings. They change every week. And you know why they change more abruptly than the other rankings week to week? Is because it's based on the resume. It's based on the results on the field. So especially early in the season, when you've only got 3 data points and you add a 4th, well, that can change considerably. Whereas everybody else just says, well, this is what we think about these teams, and we're just going to move them a couple spots because they won or lost, or we didn't like how they looked. So we'll just, where in fact, if they took the totality of the resume, it changes considerably week to week. That change is less radical the later you go in the season, obviously. So Robbie Gregg makes a point that I find to be legitimate here. He says it's a ridiculous list. So the other funny thing is that some people will criticize my top 25 based on like one team and they're okay with the rest of it. I don't know this here, but there are many times when somebody will mention that, like, I'm an idiot and this list is ridiculous, but they'll say, like, I've got one team off by 2 spots and then the rest of it's fine. But that makes me a moron. So Robbie says this is a ridiculous list. Michigan and Michigan State have nowhere close to an Ole Miss caliber win like Alabama has. Again, we are focusing on what people focus on one game. They like to focus on one game, either the game that the team lost or their best win. They like to focus on one game. Resume. Michigan, Michigan State. Yes. I've got Ole Miss ranked, I believe, much higher than most because I do believe that Arkansas is a quality win for sure. Louisville's a decent win. LSU's a decent win. And somebody else in there for Ole Miss. Tennessee, decent win. Michigan and Michigan State have not lost. And Ole Miss had Ole Miss either played better teams. So Michigan, Michigan State have not lost. Ole Miss lost. If Ole Miss would have played a solid game against Alabama, then they would be ranked higher, most likely, than Michigan and Michigan State. But they got obliterated. So they got killed. Or if they had a great win, if they had Texas A&M on their win list, or another, Kentucky, somebody else in the SEC that's good. But Arkansas by 1 point on a last second play, and Louisville and Tennessee are not doing it at this point. Ole Miss has Auburn coming up this week. But then again, the winner of the Michigan-Michigan State game is going to have that win on its resume. So Ole Miss not going to be passing the Michigan-Michigan State winner this week. That's not going to happen. So Newton Rhodes must have thought that prior to this week or 23 hours ago that he lived his life thinking that I was smarter than he is, but now he doesn't. Okay, thanks, Newton. I'm okay with either standing, whether I'm smarter or dumber than you. That's fine. So the know-it-all, we got a know-it-all here. All right, the know-it-all says, I like to rank teams on how they are currently playing for a 3-game stretch, just the last 3 games. I wish we only had 4 AP rankings that came out every year. The playoff rankings need to be every other week. Okay. So he ranks based on the last 3 weeks. And Georgia's number 1, Cincinnati 2, Michigan State's 3 based on the last 3 weeks. Beating Indiana by 5 points. Beating Western Kentucky and beating Rutgers, since Michigan State's number 3 based on that. Okay. And Ohio State beat Maryland by 49, beat Indiana by 47, and beat Rutgers by 39, and they're number 5. Okay. That doesn't hold up. All right. Deontay, what reason do you have for Ohio State being 11, but Bama's 5? That loss is an unranked team. Okay, people, again, you focus on one game. You're focused on one game. Why does everybody get laser focused on one game? That I've got Ohio State at 11 and Alabama at 5. Few reasons here. They're very simple. Alabama's beaten Ole Miss. They've beaten Florida. Give me an Ohio State win that ranks with Ole Miss and Florida. The Minnesota game's looking better. But if you look at those teams' wins and Mississippi State, no, they don't have anything close to Alabama's wins right now. Things will change soon. And Ohio State's loss at home against Oregon versus Alabama losing in a last-second field goal at Texas A&M. I rank those it's about the same loss right there. That's similar. Texas A&M's proving to be a good team like we thought they were. Three kids and a dad says, Mark, you know too much for your own good. Keep up the great work and accurate predictions. Thank you. Appreciate that so much. And still more people that are just enraged about Oklahoma number 2. Well, we'll just have to see. I had all sorts of things in my head about Oklahoma possibly maintaining that position or losing that position. Of course, if they continue to win, they'll be fine. But if one of these other teams behind them just takes off, who's going to be playing better games? Well, Oklahoma still has Oklahoma State, Iowa State, and a Big 12 championship game. Those are really the 3 wins that will hold some weight for me that I can think of. Besides that, Oklahoma State, Iowa State, and a Big 12 championship game. That's pretty much what they've got. They're 7-0 right now, so they only have 5 games left. So it's Iowa State, Oklahoma State, Baylor. Baylor's a nice win, 6-1 right now. And then the other 2 games will be like Texas Tech. They got Texas Tech this week. Texas Tech fired their coach, Matt Wells. We had Matt Wells on here on the Voice of College Football back when it was just MarkRogersTV. Matt Wells, probably 6-7 years ago when he was head coach at Utah State. We had him on 3 times, I believe. Very nice guy. What's surprising is Texas Tech, you wouldn't think the expectations there would be too high. He did go 4-8 and 4-6, not good coming into the season. I actually listed him on my list of coaches on the hot seat. So that video I produced, put him on there, my top 8 or so. But once they got off to this 5-2 start, so they're 5-2 entering Saturday's game. Texas Tech's 5-2. Not that there was a really strong 5-2. They beat Houston. They beat somebody else, West Virginia, but 5-2. Then they lost to Kansas State 25-24. And they fired him at 5-3. I'm a bit surprised. More coming in about Oklahoma. So people are generally upset about Oklahoma at number 2. And to a certain extent, Michigan State. And Ohio State's number 11. Again, people get off of they're the 11th best team in the country. No, I think they're the 2nd or 3rd best team in the country. The 11th best resume. Somebody says here, neat, AKU, Alabama over Cincinnati. Sorry, can't agree with that. Alabama's lone quality win is Ole Miss. Really? You're going to compare Alabama's wins and Cincinnati's wins? No. People get stuck on one game. What is my case for Alabama being ahead of Ohio State? According to Ralph here, I just answered that. I love how people are giving Oregon so much more credit. It's funny because people want Ohio State ranked ahead of Oregon. So they're dissing Oregon to a certain extent, but then they're puffing up Oregon as Ohio State's loss versus Alabama's loss against Texas A&M. Are we really thinking that there's a huge difference between Oregon and Texas A&M? Seriously? And Alabama lost that game, last-second field goal on the road. Ohio State lost by a touchdown at home. And again, if Texas A&M and Oregon played this week, And again, more criticism from people that do not explain their criticism. People get a bit hung up on rankings. Alabama lost to an unranked team. Well, Texas A&M 6-2. I believe the national people have Texas A&M ranked. I have them ranked. Not that I really look at that. There are more teams to be evaluated than just 25 in the country. You just don't drop off the rails and drop off the cliff if you're number 26. What's funny is Brian Myers says me ranking Ohio State 11 is clickbait fodder. Clickbait, what did he call it? Clickbait fodder. But when I don't put that in the title, it's not clickbait. Do you understand what clickbait is? Apparently not. Eyes to the sky. When is Minnesota going to get some love? People just can't seem to get past the Bowling Green loss. Okay, well, we don't need to get past the Bowling Green loss. It needs to be evaluated. So we're not going to get past it. We're going to continue to evaluate it. And Minnesota lost to Bowling Green. Minnesota came that close to being ranked in my top 25. Again, I'm close. I'm close to dissing the 25 and ranking whatever I want to each week. Maybe I'll change it each week, make it the top 37, the top 12, the top 94. We should rank everyone in the country, actually. Why don't we rank every team in the country? Why stop at 25? Does that make any sense at all? Why does that make sense? Does this make any sense at all? If it's for the college football playoff and if it's for the national championship, the teams in the bottom portion of the top 25, they are not going to be playing for the national championship. They're done. So why rank them? If we're going to rank them, then why don't we rank all of them? Can somebody answer that for me? Why would we only rank 25 teams? Might as well rank them all. Maybe I'll start ranking every team next week. Then I'll be going crazy if I do that. I also think it's humorous that a number of people mentioned that Oklahoma did not score a point against Kansas in the first half. Okay. But they scored 35 points in the second half. So they didn't score any points in the first half, but they scored 35 points in the game. That's what counts, right? We don't mark a win and send the teams home at halftime, do we? They play a second half. And then my response could be, well, they scored the equivalent of 70 points in the second half for the game. So I'm going to evaluate them on 70 points or 0. So R.W. Tyndall says Ohio State lacks strength of schedule. So he's fighting me the other way. Says Ohio State's ranked too high. Minnesota, Tulsa, Akron, Rutgers, Maryland, Indiana, and a loss to Oregon at the shoe. Ohio State plays one of the weakest schedules in college football as usual. Okay, the season's not over. Tyndall, the season is not over. If the season were over, you would be correct. Ohio State would have played a extremely weak schedule. I'm guessing, pretty fair estimate, that Ohio State is playing one of the toughest schedules in the country for the final 5 weeks of the season. Penn State, Michigan, Michigan State, Purdue, Illinois, that they're playing one of the toughest schedules in the country over the so it's a complete schedule. Understand, we're not done playing right now. Somebody else here, Matthew says, I should consider injuries. Okay, once you start to consider injuries, then again, people get hung up and isolated on just particular injuries. They know of a couple big injuries, so we're supposed to focus on those. Am I supposed to focus on Clemson having 15 players out and say, oh, I'm going to rank them because they've got 15 players out? We're talking about now Justin Ross, Brian Bresee, one of the best defensive linemen in the country. Tyler Davis was out. Do we rank Clemson based on injuries? Because they've got more than anyone that's a good team, a talented team. Okay. Not getting Notre Dame at 13, especially with Iowa ahead of them. So somebody wants Notre Dame. Oh, it's Johnny Bays. Johnny Bays is a Notre Dame fan. Again, most of these criticisms can usually be tied to the particular person's fandom. So Johnny Bays, Johnny, good to see you out there. Notre Dame fan who's been watching for a long time. Takes exception with Notre Dame at 13 because Iowa's ranked ahead of them. Well, Iowa beat Iowa State. They're good. They proved that again this past week. Iowa State's good. Iowa beat them. Iowa beat Penn State. They beat Maryland by 37 points. They lost one game to Purdue. Notre Dame lost to Cincinnati. Notre Dame has slipped by all of its opponents. Again, it's an evaluation of the performance on the field after the results. Christopher Mueller, insanity. Also, by your logic, Bama should be behind Cincinnati. But what's that, eye test? No, there's no eye test here. Alabama has played better opponents by far than Cincinnati. Alabama's schedule's not stacked with UCF and East Carolina and Murray State and Miami of Ohio. Okay. They've beaten Ole Miss. They beat Florida. They beat Mississippi State. We got Byers here, who has made no sense the entire season with his analysis. Byers used to call all the time. What's funny is we got Byers out there, and Byers used to call me when he was upset with CJ Stroud underperforming and that he was blasting CJ Stroud and Travion Henderson gaining 300 yards didn't mean anything, or 270 against Tulsa. That meant nothing. And Ohio State was garbage and Stroud was awful and he should be benched immediately. And then he super chatted me the other night, which I appreciate, of course, but just so that he can get out that he was right and I was wrong, that CJ Stroud's an elite quarterback. And I was like, wait a minute. You're the guy that called and ranted and raved for 2 weeks that CJ Stroud should be benched, and now you're calling him an elite quarterback. Insane. At least be consistent, if nothing else. Kenneth says Kentucky and Oklahoma are overrated. Well, Kentucky has lost one game. They lost it to Georgia, and they played Georgia better than anybody. They did play Georgia. Forget the final score. If you watch the game, it was 14-7 at halftime. They played Georgia better than anyone. Kentucky did. They also beat LSU by 3 touchdowns. And no, LSU's not great. We can always move the argument down the line to the next point, but LSU's talented. They're capable. And Kentucky beat it by 3 touchdowns. They beat Florida. They're 6-1. I'm good with where Kentucky is. And Kentucky actually leaped somebody this week. I'm trying to think who I moved them past. I believe it was Iowa because, again, I assessed the previous wins and losses, and Kentucky's resume became stronger, and Iowa's became weaker, mostly because of Penn State and Purdue. Iowa's resume became weaker. Troy says, okay, wait a minute. Iowa lost at home bad to Purdue. Alabama lost to unranked at the time, Texas A&M at the time. Doesn't matter at the time. Texas A&M has proven to be a good team. Oregon lost to a Stanford team that we didn't know still played football. When you lose and who you lose to matters, I thought. Well, you're not explaining what's wrong with where I have these teams ranked. We've got 73 Forever. 73 Driver. I still don't understand how BYU gets so much love. I've got them at 25. You can't find a better two-loss team to put at 25. No, I heavily weighed NC State 2 losses, Minnesota 2 losses, Oregon State 2 losses. A number of teams have 2 losses. I think there's like 19 teams in the country that have 2 losses. Weighed them all. A bunch of them are in the rankings: Texas A&M, Auburn, Penn State, others, Iowa State. But BYU makes it with wins over Arizona State and Utah, and quality loss against Baylor. I love David Abetta's comment here. You know more about college football than anyone on this planet, but sometimes you say things just to get us all pissed off. LOL. Beyond Chic says undefeated doesn't mean better. Absolutely. You are right. Adam says you can't call it the top 25 that makes sense because it doesn't at all. Cody says, I get it. It's all about resume, the actual top 3 and all that matters this year. Georgia, Ohio State 1, Alabama 2. Nobody else will win the national title but these 3 teams. Yeah, there's a question for everybody out there as we probably should strike up the phone line here. What do you think? Lady says this list is insane. What a joke. I would love to know how many people out there, because I know that there are many, and I feel good about this, and I appreciate their patience, because a lot of people said my top 25 rankings were a joke at one point, and they don't say it anymore. And that's a credit to them more so than me, that they actually continue to watch and just listen. George killed me because he didn't watch the video, because he's afraid Florida is not in the top 25. Christopher, our guy Christopher, Mr. 1984. Christopher, I hope you're in the chat right now, because this is insanely clever from you. Retitle this the top 25 that makes absolutely no sense. You should be writing like for comedy. And maybe you should write less comments to the channel. How many in the last 24 hours, Chris? What do we have, about 20 comments to the channel? The Good Wolf. There are a severely, undeniably misplaced teams on your list, but most obvious is Ohio State at 11. You even have Iowa ahead of them. You should have lost. Who should have? I always like this. Should have lost. They should have lost that game. They should have lost. This is what we're going by? Who should have lost? I can go through all sorts of games and say who should have won and who should have lost games. NC State shouldn't have lost to Miami Saturday night. So should I go ahead and rank them and consider them 6-1? They shouldn't have lost. Penn State shouldn't have lost to Illinois. Shouldn't have lost that game. Oh, shouldn't have lost. We're going to consider them Oh, you know what? They also Penn State shouldn't have lost to Illinois or Iowa, according to this guy. So Penn State's undefeated. Well, with those wins, shoot, they might be number one. Definitely number two. Penn State should be number two. The Good Wolf, I hope you watch this video because you are brilliant. Because based on your should have done this or shouldn't have done that, Penn State would be the number two team in the country because they shouldn't have lost to Iowa. Well, we know they shouldn't have lost to Illinois. If they shouldn't have lost to Iowa, then they really shouldn't have lost to Illinois because they were closer against Illinois 9 overtimes. They would have completed like one little dump pass. Game's over. They're good. So Penn State's number two. The Good Wolf has clarified everything for all of us. The shouldn't have factor means that Penn State's undefeated and they're number two in the country. Thank you. Great clarity there. Oh, my word. Why is Ohio State so low? Sure, they looked rocky at the start, but they have a 7-point loss to Oregon. They have blown out every team. They have blown out Maryland, who lost to Iowa by 37 points, who everybody's dissing right now. Iowa's no good, but they beat Maryland by 37 points as well. And Indiana, what are they doing? And yes. Now, what's going to be funny is Ohio State's going to win these games. They're going to go up in my rankings. And again, it's not going to be, I'm not going to say, well, they're number 11. They just beat Penn State. They should go to number 8, 7. No, it's an evaluation of the resumes. If all the teams in front of Ohio State win, the Penn State win will still be substantial. We'll probably, I'll just have to see how it goes. Because again, too many people out there, many that are listening to me right now, you're used to a preseason top 25 that sets the agenda, the top 25 preseason, and then teams start to win and lose, and you just start to go, okay, well, they're 3, they lost, we'll move them to 8. They're 17, they won, we'll move them to 14. They're 5, they didn't really do, okay, we'll keep them at 5. That's a stupid, completely asinine, idiotic, what other word can I use that's not going to get me kicked off of YouTube? Idiotic, completely moronic way to rank teams is to start with a preseason ranking and then just move them a little bit. Okay, well, they were number 7 and they lost a really bad game. So 17. 17. No, evaluate the whole season every week. You look at everybody's resume, and everybody's resume not only changes based on the game that they just played, but it changes based on everything else that just happened. All right. You guys want to, does anyone want to call? Let's see. Let's get in the comments section here. And if you missed by any chance the big red banner here, it says sponsors, please, meaning if you own a business and you could benefit from sponsoring here at the Voice of College Football, and consider this, not just the Voice of College Football main channel, but consider if you have a business in Columbus, Ohio, or somewhere in Michigan or somewhere in Florida that could benefit from those team channels. Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, Wisconsin, Nebraska, Iowa, Oklahoma, Texas, Notre Dame, USC, Oregon, Texas A&M, Alabama, Auburn, Tennessee, Florida, Georgia, LSU, Florida State, Miami, Virginia Tech, North Carolina, Clemson. Got them. Jeremiah, I was asking whether anyone wanted to call, and if people want to call, I will set up the phone lines. Yes, I'm aware that it's closed currently. I didn't want to burn up the phone lines while I was rambling on about my top 25 and all these responses. Oh, love everyone that's here. We got Indian Joe. Mike says he's call. The other Mike says he would call. Indian Joe says he would call, and I'm not going to read the rest of it. And sure, let's get the phone lines working here, folks. Aesthetics Hardstyle says, Mark, do you remember how it used to be that the last ranking after the championship game was how the next season began? Okay, Aesthetic Hardstyle, I don't mean to correct you, but unless there's something I'm missing, when was that ever the case? For as long as I've been alive, there's been a preseason poll that was not the same as the final ranking after the previous year championship game, especially because prior to 1998, there was not a championship game. So Aesthetic Hardstyle, the faithful viewer that you are, please reiterate that because I'm not quite getting your point. Edward, he's on it. The AP is a joke. Most voters don't watch football or a football season. So before I open up the phone lines, I'm going to explain something that many of you know. Here's the deal with most of the voters. Most of the voters, if you go through the AP in particular, they're online. You can find the list of AP voters online. You know what they do? They cover one team. You've got Joe Blow from the Jackson, Mississippi Clarion Ledger, and he goes to the Ole Miss or the Mississippi State game on Saturday. And I know this from covering the SEC in particular, but it goes on all over the country the same exact way. I know this from covering specific teams. I covered Alabama, Ole Miss, and Mississippi State at the TV station where I was the sports director. So that's who we focused on. So what do you think my day was like on a Saturday? If I was going to go to the Alabama Mississippi State game and it was a 2:30 kickoff Central Time, then I had to be at the stadium at 12:30, 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And we would have to leave hours and hours before that. So I wouldn't see any noon game that would kick off because we'd have to leave at 10 in the morning to get to the stadium. And it was a 2:30 kickoff, 3:30 Eastern time. So the 3:30 Eastern time kickoff, the game's over at 7. Then once the game's over, you go into the locker room and interview players. This is back in the old days. Go in the locker room, interview the players. Now they do the Zoom calls. Same difference, same time allotment. Then you go to the coach's news conference, set up your camera, and the newspaper writers, they all sit there and they take in the coach's comments. So 3:30 game, it's over 7:15. You're not leaving until 8:30, 9 o'clock. And then you got to drive hour, 2 hours back to your station, TV station, newspaper place, wherever, or at this point, probably home, go online, go on your laptop, whatever. And you get home at 10, 11 o'clock at night, or you stay at the stadium. A lot of those guys stay at the stadium and work there because they can plug in and not waste the time driving, and they want to get their article online as soon as possible. They're working the rest of the night. They have known one thing, that game. That's all they know. That's it. They watched Alabama and Mississippi State play. That's all they've watched. Maybe at halftime when they go to the buffet to load up on lunch at halftime, they watch for 12 minutes whoever's on the TV. That's it. And then they're given a ballot to fill out by Sunday morning. And all they do is know what scores came in. I know from being a college football junkie my whole life, and even when I lived that life, I'd be watching games I DVR'd games like all day on Saturday if I had to be away. And was watching games all week and keeping up with it like I do now, as much as possible. And it's my job. But I knew from listening to those local newspaper guys that they didn't know anything about anything going on in the rest of the country. So if they knew that back in the day that UCLA was supposed to be good that year, well, they would just hang on to that if they read that somewhere, or everybody else in the poll voted Virginia Tech really high. They just went off of groupthink. All right. Let me set up the phone lines.
Thank you for calling Call-In Studios host and call screener line. Enter your 6-digit PIN number.
Okay, folks, the phone lines are open here. 860-499-3332. 860-499-3332. I'd like to remind everyone that we've got post-game shows all day on Saturday. Ohio State, Michigan, Nebraska, Iowa, Penn State, Oklahoma, Texas, Notre Dame, Texas A&M, Florida, Georgia, Alabama, Florida State, Miami, Virginia Tech. All right. You guys are coming through on your word here. Let's take these calls. Hopefully I can get this switched over to the board. Why is it not switching? Stand by, stand by. Hello, welcome to the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line? Oh, shoot. Why can't I? Okay, keep going. I'm going to try to get you switched over on the board. How's it going?
That's going good. Hello?
Yeah, go right ahead. We're having some technical issues, but we will work through them, hopefully.
Am I on the air, though?
Yes.
Hello? Okay, good. Who have they played?
Who played?
Exactly. Why are Florida fans fed up with Dan Mullen?
Oh, we got our man here, Uncle Lou. I don't know that anyone can hear you. So for some reason, we're not going through the board here. We got unacceptable. Absolutely. Get my technician on this. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, but why is everybody so fed up with Dan Mullen? I don't understand.
So Uncle Lou is asking why everybody's upset with Dan Mullen. Well, he's losing football games.
Well, everybody loses football games.
At some point, yeah, he's losing too many of them.
Oh, okay. What about all these shenanigans, too?
Well, that doesn't help. See,
Any chance he's dressing up as Darth Vader this year?
so when you've got the Bluetooth is on, hopefully this comes through. Hang with me, Lou. Hang with me.
Yep.
Hey, we got you now. Bingo. Our Bluetooth was not connected
Hello?
well enough. Hey, introduce yourself to the world.
Yeah, this is Uncle Lou here.
There he is.
But who have they played?
Love it. Florida. So who has Florida played?
Who have they played?
So everybody's upset with Dan Mullen. They gave Alabama
Kansas
a
ain't
pretty
played
good game.
nobody. Kansas ain't played nobody.
No. They didn't play anybody last week, did they?
No.
They didn't finish though, unfortunately.
Here's my playoff wish list. You ready? In this order.
Love to hear it. Yes.
Oklahoma. I really want Oklahoma to get in. Oregon, please.
Okay.
Please.
Okay. I've got a lot of questions coming. Keep going.
Yeah. Now after that, it really doesn't matter. Ohio State, Cincinnati. Cincinnati's best team in Ohio. Ohio State, second best team in Ohio. Doesn't really matter. The main thing is doesn't everybody who's a playoff contender want Oklahoma and Oregon to get in? Except Ohio State, of course, because they can't beat Oregon. How you lose to Oregon at home? That's a previously undiscovered level of poverty.
Well, by Ohio State it is because they were 10-0 against Oregon before that.
Hey, did you know that last year when the Oklahoma fan was running around at the end of the season telling everybody they were one of the best teams in America, Ohio State fan told them to shut up. They shouldn't have lost in the beginning of the season.
Well, yeah, but they lost 2 games. They did lose 2 games.
Yeah, it was hilarious. I know. It was hilarious.
So you've had Georgia teams that made the playoffs with a loss, right? Right?
Yeah.
Okay. So Uncle Lou, we got to stop right there. We got the world famous Uncle Lou on the line. So I got to pin you down because you don't call very often. So you get your wish list and you only come up with 2 and you don't even care about the other 2?
Well, it doesn't matter who else gets in, period. But the point is, everybody who's a playoff contender wants Oklahoma or Oregon to get in because with a 4-team playoff, playing Oklahoma or Oregon is the closest thing you get to a bye week in the playoffs.
The way it's looking, yeah, I would agree with that based on Oklahoma's history and based on Oregon playing the likes of Stanford and UCLA and other teams, Fresno State, down to the wire. So you've assumed that Georgia's made it. They're in, so you don't even put them on your wish list anymore. Arrogant Georgia.
Well, they're getting in. I mean, right. Even people who hate Uncle Lou have to admit Georgia's getting in. It burns them up to do it. It burns them up, Mark. They can't stand it. Hey, did you know that losing to Oregon is better than beating Navy by 7?
I did not know that, but I know who we're comparing there. But we're comparing one game, I guess.
Well, yeah. Anyway,
not looking at the rest of the season there.
Oh, well, I mean, we can look at best win if you want.
Who do you have ranked higher, Oregon or Ohio State?
I have internal conflicts on that.
I do too.
I do think Ohio State's a better team right now.
Okay.
But it's hard to rank when you have 2 teams like that with the same record and one team beat the other.
Thank you.
It puts you in a hard spot. Everybody does their rankings their own way, but it's a combination of where you think someone deserves to be ranked versus like what they've earned.
Yes.
So like earned, Oregon should be ahead of Ohio State. But if you've watched them play football the last 3 or 4 weeks, I mean, I don't know anybody right now that would bet $1 on Oregon to beat Ohio State.
You're all making good points here.
It makes it hard in that situation because Oregon has just done nothing since then.
I want to be able to honor the head-to-head. I think there's a reason they got in an airplane and traveled 3,000 miles to go play a football game at Ohio State, and they won the game. But
and you know what else? If I'm Oregon and I finish the season 12-1 with a Pac-12 title and I get left out, I'm never scheduling another Power 5 non-con opponent.
Yeah, why would you? Why would you?
Because there's no benefit. You traveled, played them at home, avoided the con that is neutral site games, which I hate. You go out there, you beat them, you go 12-1, you win a Power 5 conference with a win over what will likely be at the very least the top 10 Ohio State team, and they still don't put you in. That would be it if I was Oregon's athletic director. I'd say that's it. Where we're playing, 3 FCS teams a year in our Pac-12 schedule.
Yeah.
But there's no point in it.
They can't help how bad the Pac-12 is. That's not their responsibility. It's almost like a Clemson situation.
No, they can't help it, but they can help that they barely beat those bad teams.
True.
That
and they
can
did
help.
lose to Stanford. So what do you make out of Wake Forest? Or are we just wasting our time probably talking about them? But it does intrigue me that they have the opportunity to run the table.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't think Wake Forest is terrible. But if you look at their schedule, it was kind of set up to happen this way. I think they have 20-something super seniors on that team, and their toughest 4 games of the year are their last 4 games of the season.
Yes.
I don't think they're going 12-0. You know, they might be better one-on-one with all 4 of those teams that they end their season with, but I don't think they're good enough to beat them all 4 in a row. You know?
I agree.
But it'll be Wake versus Pitt. I'll watch that. Wake versus Pitt ACC title game. I think that'll be a good game. Wake scores 100 points a game. Kenny Pickett might be the 2nd or 3rd best quarterback in the Power 5 this season. I'll watch that game. That'd be an interesting game. Will the Clemson fans watch it?
Well, they should. Everybody had to watch them for the last 7 years.
Yeah, that's true. Hey, what's that backup quarterback's name for Clemson?
Tyson Pumachow.
Yeah, what are they doing? They just recruiting people with the hardest names to pronounce. Have you seen Dabo Swinney's new commercial?
That's the strategy. I have not.
Yeah, he's got his own car lot now, and it's Dabo standing there, and he goes, "Hey, this is Dabo Swinney. Come down to Dabo's used car lot and Kleenex Carnival. Trade in. No. Buy the all new Mitsubishi Puma-chan. It won't get you where you want to go, but it's way more reliable than your Hyundai Uiungalele." Have a good day, Mark.
That's beautiful. Thanks, Lou. Appreciate it, man. Uncle Lou. I'm sure most of you, if not all, are familiar. Uncle Lou right here on YouTube. Check out his work. It's phenomenal. Great stuff. Enjoy it every time. All right. Next up here at the Voice of College Football.
I'm just doing some homework, bro.
You're on. Let's go. Hey.
Okay. And I'll do the other thing.
Wow, we're working out domestic issues here at the Voice of College Football. Hello. Going in 1, 2. Hello. Welcome to the Voice of College Football. All right. We've got dead.
Hello?
All right. We did our best to hang in there. Welcome to the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Mark, it's Mike.
Hey, Mike. What's going on?
Not much. I want to talk about the Big Ten a little bit.
Okay. Love it.
Here's my thing. No matter what, guaranteed, the winner of the Big Ten gets to the playoff, right?
I hope so, because it's arguably the best conference in America.
And I want to know, what do you think about Michigan State this week?
I think Michigan's a better football team. I believe that they're not substantially better. I think it's going to be a really good game. Michigan State just hasn't really had to play anyone too difficult, and neither is Michigan, but they did play at Nebraska and they did play Wisconsin and won those games. I just think Michigan's more talented, and they've got some superstars on their defense that could make a difference. Just better, more talented guys on defense, especially.
I'm a big Michigan fan, but
I'm happy we're 6. I'm happy with what we're doing, but when I see Ohio State play, we can't beat them. We're not in the same speed. We're so slow.
Well, it's kind of looking that way. It's starting to shape up that way.
You know what I mean? I don't know. But I don't know how you put Alabama 5.
No? What don't you like about that?
I don't like that they're 5, but I mean, I guess who you going to put there?
Where should they be?
I don't know. They're probably 3 or 4.
Oh, they should be
to
higher.
Be honest.
They should be higher. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not personally basing this on how good I believe the teams are. I believe Georgia, Alabama, and Ohio State are the 3 best teams in the country. And right now, Georgia's substantially the number 1 team.
Yeah, Georgia is the best. Georgia is the best, clearly. But, well, and they got to change the playoffs. This playoff system in college football, they got to do something.
Well, I've been saying that for years. So what do you want to have done?
More teams. More
Yes.
games. I don't know. I mean, would they shorten this? Can they shorten? They wouldn't shorten the season, right? It would cost too much money. I don't know. But they have to do something because it's not fair this way. You don't get to see enough.
Well, it's not going to cost too much money. They're going to make more money.
So I don't understand why don't they do it? I mean, it'd be, imagine that. I mean, it's not enough teams in it.
You are right, sir. There's no doubt about that, Mike. I've been clamoring that forever.
You got to go like I'm a Michigan fan. Basically, here's my season. I got to go undefeated. That's my mentality right now is I got to win out the rest of the year. That's the only way to get in. And you know what I mean? You got to go undefeated, then win the Big Ten championship, then get into the playoffs. I don't know. It's not right that way. So, I mean, for everybody too. SEC, everybody. I'm just saying they should shorten the games in the season.
So if we knock out one regular season game and then expand the playoffs, I think we'll be all set. We're not going to overtax these players. So we'll be fine.
Why don't you think they do it? What do you think the real reason is? I mean, they know it would be a success.
There are certain conferences, the Big Ten being one, that has been against, they were originally against any kind of playoff, first and foremost, and then against expansion. So we did.
What do you think about Harbaugh?
What do I think about Harbaugh?
Yeah, at the end of this season, what do you think is going to happen to him?
Oh, I think he's, unless they have some kind of complete collapse, that he's kept his job.
Yeah, he's definitely done enough to keep his job, but I don't know.
They're going to go 10-2 at worst, you would think, and they're not going to fire him after a 10-2 season. Now, I think if 10-2 continues to be a loss to Ohio State, at some point, maybe next year, they say, we don't care if you went 10-2 or 11-1. You have to beat Ohio State and get to the championship game. This has been going on too long. But I don't think this is the year. I think they did a reset after last season and tore up the contract, redid the coaching staff, and I think they gave him a bit of a reset, and I don't think they're going to be that harsh on him this year. And he's already 7-0. So I think he's...
What is Ohio State doing so differently?
Than Michigan?
They're getting talent like they... Then yes, like in other words, you know what I mean? Michigan's a big school. They recruit good. They get the talent. They want to go there just as much as Ohio State. What's the problem? Why is your team so much faster at every position? I don't you know what I mean? Why are you getting all the time? What's the problem?
Well, I think that guys like Dabo Swinney have kind of unveiled what it takes to become an elite in college football, because he's talked about it, that at one point in Clemson's history, meaning right around the time that he took over, they decided we're all in. We're all in on football. We want to be a football school. We're not going to be ashamed about that. That we're going to not hold back anything. Money, resources, facilities. If we need to hire a 37-man coaching staff, scouts, whatever we need to do, airplanes to get coaches to recruit, whatever, we will do anything to win. And Ohio State basically that has that mentality. Michigan puts a lot of resources into it, but I don't think that they're just on the same page from an administration level that football is most important. I think Michigan is running shock and awe that they're actually running an institution, a place of higher learning first and foremost, and that the football is important, but it's not. We won't do anything that it takes to win.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I'll tell you one, as a Michigan fan, and I like Harbaugh. I think he's a good. He wins wherever he goes. I have to give it to him. He wins games. He doesn't win big games. He never won anything big, but he does win games. But I thought we'd be better. I thought we'd have at least one Big Ten by now.
Oh, I would have thought it so as well, especially after the 2015 season. So he comes into a 5-7 team, makes him a 10-win team. I would have thought at that point, yeah, by 2021, this team's winning a Big Ten championship and going to the playoff.
I'll tell you what, I know this ain't going to happen because you said it, but I'd fire him if we lose Ohio State this year, and I know we're gonna. It's weird because I know I lie to myself, but as a football fan, when I see the games, you got to be blind not to see the difference. They're still faster than us, and it might be a little closer, but we got
to see about Michigan State against some better defenses.
Yeah, I think we could beat Michigan State. I actually think, to be honest, Penn State's going to give us a problem, and Ohio State's going to give us a problem. And if we would have played Iowa, we would have lost to them this year. But we don't play them, so.
All right, Mike. Well, I appreciate the call.
Well, I like your show all the time, Mark.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
Going over here.
Thanks, man. I appreciate you calling, and enjoy the game this weekend.
I watch you on Steve's show too on Tuesdays, but he's too crazy sometimes.
Well, we'll be recording again tomorrow.
I know. I watch it.
Okay.
I'll call again. I know you got a lot of callers.
Well, thanks, Mike.
Thanks for taking my call.
You have a good one. Right. Absolutely. Thank you.
You too. Yep.
All right. That was Mike, Michigan fan. Good to hear from those Michigan fans and to see whether they're shaky about 7-0 or feeling confident here. Welcome to the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Hey, what's up, Mark? Exploring with Ben.
Hey, what's going on, man?
Well, loving the the banter between you and Lou. Lou is quite the character.
Yeah, there wasn't any banter between Lou and I. We just let Lou go. We just let him talk.
Oh yeah, no, yeah, that's his that is his personality. That is his personality. You just do the logic thing, and I like that too.
There's room for everyone.
Yeah. This is going to be a quick fire. I'm now from Trinidad. I'm in North Dakota. What do you think about Matt Wells getting fired earlier? Or yesterday, I guess.
Yeah, I just made a quick comment on it that Matt Wells did an excellent job at Utah State. That propels him into the Texas Tech job, of course. 4-8, coming off of what had been accomplished there with Cliff Kingsbury, which wasn't a heck of a whole lot. Cliff Kingsbury, when you look at his credentials to go to the NFL, they weren't substantial at all, but he's doing a nice job there. So anyway, Matt Wells comes into this season after 4-8 and 4-6. And if you would have told me that Matt Wells would get fired being 5-2 and then losing a 25-24 game to Kansas State to go to 5-3, even though I think it's a shaky 5-3, I don't know what else is going on down there that they've suddenly raised their standard to that degree to fire a coach mid-season who's 5-3 that just lost a game by 1 point to a competent team. I don't know what else is in the works there. And actually, we got a Texas Tech guy coming on in the next couple of days, and maybe he can answer that question because it just doesn't seem fireable at a place like Texas Tech.
Oh, well, I mean, I guess maybe they saw the light of other schools firing their coaches because, I mean, they had their comeback, from behind win to beat Houston at the opener. They had to come, like, they were down a lot,
Sure.
and then they got blown out. I think it was, against Texas, wasn't it? They got blown out. Now they have to transfer because I know from Shuck, I don't know if he's still the starter. I haven't been paying attention to Texas Tech football, but, he's transferred from Oregon, so maybe they're figuring, okay, not developing players, and then, maybe it's shaky. So they're going, I don't know.
Actually, Shuck started out the season as the starter. He won the job, and then he didn't perform well.
Yep.
He had an awful pick six in the Texas game. They pulled him in the Texas game, and Henry Columbi, who had been the starter at Texas Tech, took over, and he's been the starter since.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, I'm not a Texas Tech fan, so I'm not following it. I just knew that was the starter originally. So, yeah, maybe they just saw there's a shaky.
Oh, it's a weak
foundation
5-3 team. Yes.
Yeah. So maybe they just saw the light with everyone else, like Ogeron and everyone getting the plug. They're like, you know what? Time to do it too.
I guess, but those other situations were pretty obvious. Again, you're Texas Tech. So what's your standard? What do you want to go? 7-5, 8-4? That would be pretty damn good.
Maybe they're going to give Mike Leach the money they owe him still and bring him back.
This tells you a lot about what Mike Leach did at Texas Tech. I don't know that people realize that in 5 of his last 6 seasons at Texas Tech, Mike Leach's Texas Tech teams finished ranked in the top 25. 5 of the last 6 years he was there. Can you imagine thinking about Texas Tech as a top 25 team 5 out of 6 years? They don't even, I'm supposed to be covering everyone here, but that's impossible. So I got to say, Texas Tech's not exactly on my radar every Saturday. So Mike Leach did a great job there, obviously.
Oh, yeah, no. I mean, that's what I mean. It's like, yeah, maybe they're like, hey, let's save some money, get him back. I mean, because that was when he was super set. I mean, Kingsbury did a really good job, but they just couldn't put it all together, defensively. So it was just so offensively, oriented. But yeah, Leach did an amazing job. But I won't keep you, Mark, too much. Sometimes when you're on hold, you lose track of thought. Plus, I got to get to dinner with a coworker here. So you have a great show, and I can't wait to hear Uncle Lou's banter later because, yeah.
Well, have a good one, man. Thanks for the call. Appreciate it.
You too.
All right. Next up on the Voice of College Football, who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, it's the real MVP. How you doing?
The real MVP. How's it going?
Yeah, it's going good. You hung up on me the first time, but my mom was showing me Halloween costume.
Okay.
We're big into Halloween here.
So the real MVP, that's fine, but understand in the process of me hanging up on you,
I know.
I was like listening to, I don't know what was going on there. You're telling me you were arguing about Halloween costumes, but
no. We weren't arguing.
We were mighty patient here, waiting for you to figure things out there. I called for you a number of times there, so
it's okay. Hey, listen. If it takes more than 2 or 3 seconds, just hang up and get to me later. If you run the show, if it takes too long, just go on to the next person. That's very disrespectful what I did to the caller behind me, and I would like to apologize to that person.
Well, you actually allowed them to get on sooner.
Well, yeah, but still, I should have been prepared.
Well, what's on your mind tonight besides Halloween costumes?
Well, I wanted to ask about, you said Oklahoma, and you had them at 2, and your justification was people were using Kansas game and saying that Kansas game's not the only reason. Well, Oklahoma hasn't looked good in many games this year.
Okay.
Whether it's Tulane,
True.
Nebraska, West Virginia.
Yep.
So I'm just wondering, I'm not saying they shouldn't be in this. I think they're 7, 8. So we're not arguing about a whole lot of spots.
Well,
but still,
it's substantial. All right. So who is the number 2 team in the country? If you're just
Alabama.
Okay. Let's understand something before we continue our debate here. Number 1 is that I do not believe that Oklahoma is the second best team in the country. Okay. You understand how I do these rankings?
They have the second best resume.
Okay. All right. Okay. Just wanted to make sure we were clear on that. So you're telling me that Alabama has the second best resume in the country?
I believe right now Alabama has the second best resume in the country.
Well, they've lost a game.
Now, I haven't looked down. I understand, but that was just one game.
Yeah.
Just one game.
Lost one game.
We can't say, hey, they lost one game, so they're immediately disqualified. Like, we can't
Absolutely
say,
not.
well, they dominated.
I'm catching all kinds of flack because I've got Alabama ahead of Cincinnati and a few other undefeated teams. So at the
I have Alabama ahead of Cincinnati.
At the time that Alabama lost this game to Texas A&M, Texas A&M had shown us nothing. They lost to Arkansas. They lost to Mississippi State. Look at Colorado. Colorado right now is the worst offense in the country, and Texas A&M almost lost to them. Now, they've gotten better since then, and I have even moved Texas A&M into my rankings. They're up to 6-2, and they've beaten a couple of decent teams in addition to Alabama. Okay, so that I am not blasting Alabama for losing to Texas A&M. I think that's a lot of people are in the comments section. They don't think I should have Alabama that high because they lost to a quote unquote unranked team. While Ohio State apparently has lost to this great Oregon team. But if you look at Oregon and Texas A&M, I think they're pretty comparable.
They're pretty similar.
Pretty similar.
You can even make the argument that Texas A&M could be ranked above Oregon.
Sure, you could.
If they were to play right now.
Oh, they play better teams? Again,
So,
I don't get into that whole if they played now business.
Okay, but
When I'm
even
ranking
general
teams.
resume stuff.
Yeah. Oh, sure.
You could.
They play better teams.
So.
Texas A&M does. They've had to deal with Arkansas and Mississippi State and Alabama. And who else have they dealt with? Nobody real tough here the last couple of weeks, certainly with Missouri and South Carolina. But they've at least they blasted both of them, which is what they're supposed to do, not messed around like Oregon. Yeah.
So I would have Alabama 2, and then I would have it's difficult because I respect Oregon beating Ohio State, unlike a lot of people. So I guess right now I would go Oregon 3, Ohio State 4, Michigan 5, Michigan State 6, and then 7, 8 is either Ole Miss or Oklahoma.
Okay. Wow. You've got Oregon all the way up at number 3 and Ohio State up there as well. Okay.
Well, that's just for right now. Again, that is right now.
Right now.
Because if Ohio State goes 3-0 against Penn State, Michigan State, I'm going to have them jump Oregon. I think the resume will be substantial enough where they are a clearly better team. And that's what the committee looks at. So that's what I've got to look at.
Yeah, that's I have no issues with her. Maybe I should say this every time I produce this video. I'm not saying that this is the end all be all, can't be argued, can't be debated in any way. there are arguments to be made all over the place. And I think 2 to 8 is pretty razor thin.
Oh, I agree with that 100%. I think the gap between Georgia, which is very fitting, you had Uncle Lou as the first caller because he's a big Georgia fan. He's number one. Georgia's number one. Everybody else.
Mm-hmm. For right now, till we see
fighting
different.
for second.
Yep. Till we see something different, which I can about guarantee we won't until the SEC championship game, maybe.
Yeah. I would even say for Uncle Lou, I heard his saying, I'm surprised he didn't throw Cincinnati in teams he wished to play. Because Cincinnati, I mean, if you had to get a weak schedule, weak teams in there, I think Georgia, Cincinnati, Oregon, Oklahoma, that would be the 4 you would want if you're a Georgia fan.
It's too bad we can't get Oklahoma, Oregon, Wake, and Cincinnati in.
No. Well, maybe in a few years when they expand it.
Well, sure, then it.
But, yeah. And also, right now, I would say Cincinnati has a better win than Oklahoma. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah. Yep.
So is it fair to rank Cincinnati above Oklahoma right now? No, right now. Not 3 weeks from now, right now.
I'm not big on just taking the one win.
Well, I get that, but I'm saying they've dominated everybody else where even though Oklahoma's played bad competition, they've looked bad.
People may want to look back at that Indiana game.
Yeah, it wasn't a good showing by Cincinnati.
No, and it looks better on the scoreboard because people will just say 38-24. That's a 2-touchdown win. It wasn't a 2-touchdown win like most 2-touchdown wins. It was a close game. Ohio State played Indiana. Now, Michael Penix, starting quarterback's out. These teams change from week to week too, so we understand that there's an evolution during the season. Some teams continue to get better and they stay healthy, relatively healthy, and they develop and get better, especially if they have young players at key positions like quarterback. Other teams just are decimated and fall apart, come off the rails. Other teams are like LSU, and you don't know who's going to show up week to week.
Yeah, I agree. By the way, when you were mentioning wins Ole Miss had that were good, LSU's got to be thrown in there. It's a good win for Ole Miss.
I thought I did.
I mean, Ole Miss dominated them.
Maybe I didn't.
So that's,
yeah.
I think that's also why we have Ole Miss and Oklahoma kind of back and forth because it's just not one game Oklahoma's looked bad or has played bad. It's 3 or 4 now. And it's enough to give you the breaks and be like, I don't know, because they got to, I mean, I can't believe I'm saying this, but it's entirely possible they win 2 out of 4. These next 4 games, they got to go on the road to play Baylor, Iowa State, and then go on the road to play Oklahoma State. I mean, everybody's just chalking them up to the Big 12 championship game. It's entirely possible they lose to Iowa State and Oklahoma State, and they're not even in it.
Well, if they lose those 2 games, okay, let's play this out. They will be 7-2 in the conference. Iowa State has lost once, so I guess Iowa State would continue to win the other games and finish 8-1, so they'd probably be in. And maybe Oklahoma State wins the rest of its games, goes 8. Maybe it's a rematch between Iowa State and Oklahoma State. And even if one of them loses, especially if Oklahoma State loses another game besides Oklahoma, they win the tiebreaker against Oklahoma. And they still get in. Yeah.
Yeah.
If Oklahoma plays like they did against Nebraska and West Virginia and some of these teams, Kansas, then they will lose again or lose a game or 2.
Yeah. And I don't think that's entering the people's conscience enough.
Well, it's entering my conscience, but I'm not ranking Oklahoma on possibly losing games in the future. when they lose those games,
No, I'm not saying that.
they will plummet.
I'm not saying that at all.
They will.
I agree with that. I'm just saying right now they should be 7 or 8. That's all I'm saying. And then everything else is just hypothetical about the future because we don't know anything. I mean, Bowling Green beat Minnesota, Texas A&M beat Alabama, Illinois beat Penn State. So weird upsets happen all the time. So when people say this should happen, this should happen, this should happen, no, that's not how this sport works.
Yeah, I don't know if you heard the comment that I read from the comment section, but one person told me that that Iowa shouldn't be ranked as high as they are because Penn State should have beaten them. Well, that also means that Penn State should have won that game. So you're not only saying Iowa's not as good because they should have lost this game. Well, then you're giving Penn State a win. And if you're going to say that Penn State should have won that game, well, shouldn't they have just won the game that they played 9 overtimes at home? That any 1 2-point play would have pushed it to a victory, an ugly one, but a victory. Well, then this whole should have business, if you want to play that game, then Penn State's, they're the number 2 team in the country because they should have won those 2 games and they'd be undefeated.
All right. The only thing I can give a little credence to is that the game changed when Sean Clifford went down.
Yeah.
I can give a little credence. I can give credence to that argument. Hey, Penn State was dominating. We got to hold the break. But it would hurt Iowa's case more than Penn State, in my opinion. Because Penn State did lose.
That's where I try to.
But Iowa didn't.
I try to look at both sides because Penn State had a 17-3 lead when Sean Clifford left the game. Let's also understand Sean Clifford does not play defense, and Iowa immediately took the next possession and scored a touchdown. So in a sense, he left at 17-10. You can look at it both ways because by the time he would have gotten back on the field, it was 17-10. So it's a 1-score game. I don't know that Penn State's dominating them at 17-10, but we'll never know. We'll never know.
But it did feel that.
We'll never know.
It did feel though that. Right, that's right. I mean, we can't say this could happen, but I do see the argument that Sean Clifford being out did hurt Penn State and help Iowa win.
Oh, well, there's no doubt it hurt them. It was significant. The backup was awful.
Right.
Spaghetti Factory is.
I've been talking.
There's a comment here by Spaghetti Factory that the real MVP of trunk or treating. I don't know what we're referring to there, but we will certainly pick up that super chat contribution there. Appreciate that.
Well, I love candy. I love Halloween candy. I mean, we can go on a whole Mike Leach type of spiel about what candy's best.
What candy
if you want to. Well, I'm a Snickers guy.
Ooh, yeah, sure.
Snickers and M&M's. Twix are pretty good as well.
You're gonna make me run down to the store. I'm like right around the corner. My development from a Dollar General, I could be there in like 45 seconds and just bam. This is after I finished off the cookies and ice cream last night, and my intention was to be good now for basically the week, I guess. But you start talking about that stuff. Sorry to cut you off to real MVP, but yeah, anything chocolate related is at the top of my list. Kit Kats, Reese's Peanut Butter Cups. Those are probably my 2 favorites.
Oh, the Reese's Pieces are really good as well.
Yeah.
They're M&M's, but they got that like peanut butter type taste. Oh my gosh, they're amazing.
What might be the ultimate Halloween candy argument, and I'll serve this one up to you, is you have your people that love candy corn and your people that hate candy corn. So where do you stand on candy corn? I'm
an anti-candy corn person.
Okay. I like candy corn.
I'm not. I'm not. I'll eat it. But is it in the top 5 things you can get? No.
I agree.
I would rather get like a small packet. I would rather get like a small packet of M&M's or some Twix or some Kit Kats.
Yeah, I would agree.
That's my. If you want to, Yeah. If you want a pro Halloween tip, as a kid, I loved the choose your own bag where you'd have the person come outside and you pick out the bag. That was so great. Because they had a variety and you could choose whatever you wanted.
Yeah, see, I like candy corn,
Those are good.
but I'm not going to eat candy corn in the middle of March. Whereas
No.
all those other selections we mentioned, I'll eat at any point, any time of the year, any day.
Absolutely. And that's why they're so good options, too. Candy corn and candy corn with the pumpkin spice latte of candy. It's only good for a season, and then it's completely off everybody's radar.
For some reason, I don't like pumpkin flavored anything. I like pumpkin pie itself. I love pumpkin pie, but pumpkin anything else, I'm not a big fan of.
I'm not sure and where if this has become a trend, but in my local like Starbucks, they're usually the first one to get on it. They did it in like September this year. I just think personally, like it's okay. It's good. I like the flavor of it, but something about pumpkin spice in late September, October, and early November is when it counts.
Yeah.
Not like middle of September. That's just rushing the holidays along.
Well, that's what these
For no
retail
reason.
establishments do. They like to rush the shoot. I worked at a Walmart at one point in my life, and the holiday decorations and all that would roll in sometime in like early September.
Early September?
Oh yeah.
Oh my gosh. Are we talking like Christmas stuff or are we just talking if it's Halloween I can get it, but if it's like
Christmas.
Thanksgiving and Christmas, that's way too far.
Christmas. Yes. Christmas.
Oh my goodness. If you're don't be that person. Don't be that person. Maybe I'm starting to get onto okay, maybe after Halloween train. Because I was vehemently on the no Thanksgiving matters holiday. I'm starting to buy the argument, but I'm definitely not before Halloween have Christmas stuff. You're skipping two major holidays.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean,
that's the retail business. All right, to real MVP, I better move on to these other calls.
Yeah, I would like to just say one thing, okay, Mark?
Absolutely.
And Coastal Carolina is 24 in the country. That doesn't make sense.
Even after they lost, we couldn't kick them out. I noticed that. I try to stay away from the rankings, but I saw them on the bottom line during maybe the NFL game or whatever it was yesterday. And yes, I saw Coastal Carolina, and I thought they lost to Appalachian State, who lost to Miami, who lost to any number of teams. And Coastal Carolina's win total is their win resume is atrocious. Anyway.
Hey, Butch Jones, Arkansas State got something going there, man.
Yep.
1-5.
All right, man.
1-5.
Have a good one.
See you later, Mark.
All right.
Good talking to you.
Absolutely.
Okay. Bye-bye.
All right. Next up at the Voice of College Football. But before we take this call, let me get to this super chat. Appreciate that so much from Brady's. Let's be honest, as an Ohio State fan, we have the worst fan base on the planet. I cringe at some of the takes I see from them. Majority don't even watch football. Wow. My general take on fan bases is that every fan base is about the same. You have your people that know nothing, but they're harmless. They don't make a lot of accusations. They don't try to pretend that they know anything. They're just kind of clueless fans that just watch the game, and they don't dissect statistics, and they don't get into the whole analysis of the game. They just show up and watch the game, and then they leave it alone. You got your fans that obviously on the other end of the spectrum who read everything, know everything, and they actually mix that with a little logic and a little sense, and they're just a knowledgeable fan. We have many of these people, many of you that comment here that know what you're talking about, and but keep a sane mindset. Then you got all sorts of delusional people and all sorts of crazies and people that don't know anything about other teams, and some people that They buy all the paraphernalia. They got all the gear, but they don't even know their own team. I run across those people sometimes, and used to. That to look at them, look at their house, you would think that they were the biggest fan of that particular team on the planet. And then you talk to them and you realize they don't even know who their best running back is. So Brady's is down on the Ohio State fan base. All right, next up here, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
This is Jeremiah.
Hey, Jeremiah. What's going on?
I called you. I want to talk about people being like, I guess, too sugar happy with trying to fire coaches and all that. You know, like, I feel like after, like, so with Texas, for example, like, so the fans prior to the season, they see their team as like an 8-4 team, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they get to the first 5 weeks, and if they have one loss, I think, especially as Texas fans, we like drink the Kool-Aid, and we think we're like a top-notch team, and then we drop a couple games that we think we should have beat, but before the season started, we didn't think we were going to beat. And then now we're calling for like coaches to be fired and all that. I don't know what you think about that, but the Tech situation at the moment after losing to Oklahoma State.
I think what you just had to say makes a whole lot of sense. I see the same thing. So with Texas in particular, Texas played a good Arkansas team. That Arkansas team certainly got off to a great start, and because of the Texas win, the Texas A&M win, people overrated Arkansas. And I know people are going to jump on me and say I overrated Arkansas, but it's a resume-based. I clearly stated when I had Arkansas ranked extremely high that I did not believe that they were that good. Anyway, yeah, what happened with Texas was it seemed like the Texas fans that I talked to, that I see comments from, got super giddy about beating Texas Tech and TCU. Well, those two teams aren't very good. And I know that the Texas Tech game was mighty impressive offensively, scoring 70 points. But the TCU game was, it was a game that Texas had in hand, but they only won by 5. It wasn't overly impressive. So to beat two pretty marginal teams, and Texas fans seem to bank everything on the season on those 2 wins. And I heard the same thing. Texas fans were very happy and saw themselves in the Big 12 championship game just based on those 2 games.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's like, but then it's like, then we start saying a fire defensive coordinator, and they're like, Sark is a terrible coach, and like, Sark's been here for like not even a year, and they expect him to like overhaul all the players, have all the players on like playoff level caliber teams, constantly beating the best teams in the country. And if they don't do that, it's unacceptable. But before the season starts, they think it's acceptable to be 8-4. And it's like, I feel like other teams seem like do this as well. Like Arkansas really drank the Kool-Aid, but I think that's because they haven't been good for even longer than Texas hasn't been good. So I think it's just teams like Tennessee thought they were going to be really, really good, and then they got destroyed. I just think fans need to like cool on their enthusiasm about their team sometimes, be a little more realistic.
Well, yeah, that could be said all over the place. But I think some of the teams that you just hit are the worst culprits, because you've got your just a few elites, of course, and so those programs are generally coming through almost every season. So those are only 4 or 5 programs. And then you've got a lot of fan bases across the country that can't expect a whole lot from their team because they root for Virginia Tech, or they root for Purdue, or they root for Kansas State. So they go 8-4, they feel good, and they went to a bowl game. If they go 6-6, they're like, okay, well, we'll get them next year. And that was okay. It wasn't at the end of the world. Then you've got the type of teams that you're talking about that have had great success at various times in their history, Tennessee, Texas. And so they see themselves in a certain place, irregardless, or let me correct that because that is not a word, regardless of the current status of the program. So if anything, I think Tennessee has had a nice season, considering what they've been through, considering how lousy they were last year, considering the offseason and the Jeremy Pruitt situation. For them to come out of that and play well for 3 quarters against Alabama, to play well for 3 quarters against Florida, to beat who did they beat? They played Ole Miss down to the wire. And, you know, they racked up wins against the kind of teams that you would expect them to, like Missouri and South Carolina, in impressive fashion, just blew the doors off both of them. That they're having a pretty reasonable season. I think Josh Heupel's doing a nice job.
Yeah, but I mean, some of them were, I don't know, I guess thinking that they were going to be contending for the East or something like that. At the
I don't know anyone
to not beat Georgia. I don't know. Well, I don't know.
I didn't hear from those people, fortunately.
All right. Well,
thanks for the call. Appreciate it.
All right. Bye.
All right. Let's take these 2 calls, and then we will wrap it up for the night right here at the Voice of College Football. I appreciate the super chat coming in from One Scoop John. One scoop. If you can keep it to 1 scoop, John, you've done a nice job. So I can't do that. I either need to just indulge or just cold turkey, done, can't do it. Keep up the good work. Mark, I'm on Team Kit Kat. Well done. Go Blue. Yeah, Team Kit Kat. Exceptional. That would be my number 1 choice. But again, the Reese's Peanut Butter Cups, it's 1 and 1A. Either way, I'm good. All right. Want to take these 2? I'll take these 3 calls in rapid fire fashion here at the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, it's Matthew. I didn't think you got enough of me today, so I decided to call in.
I got enough of you today.
Yeah, we just talked about Texas. Come on.
Oh, you, Matthew. I don't know who's calling me when people call in, you know?
I know. I'm just messing with you.
So what you got?
Okay, so one caller, a couple of callers ago, brought up a good point about Texas Tech, and I wanted you to guess how many times have they finished ranked inside the AP top 25 in the last 89 years of their history of football?
Well, I made the point, if you heard it, I don't know if you heard the point that I made about Mike Leach. And I've got it ingrained in my skull because I've repeated it like 47 times for different type videos talking about what Mike Leach accomplished there. Because I don't think of Texas Tech as being a top 25 program. Like, they're so far off my radar that I just don't. And certainly under Cliff Kingsbury, who people dismiss his tenure, and he had a horrible tenure there. His conference record was something like a 32% winning percentage. He did a horrible job there. If you're basing it on wins and losses, which that's what I typically do. Wink, wink. So Mike Leach finished ranked in the top 25 5 of his last 6 seasons there. So take him out of the mix. I can think of some decent Texas Tech teams in the 80s and 90s. I know they went to the Cotton Bowl in 95 with a team that, ironically, it was a bit of a joke, went 6-5-1. So, 89 years of football. Leach did it 5 times. I'm going to say that it's happened 9 times.
Very close, 11, and he's done it. Yeah, he did it 5 times.
I was going to say 11.
Spike Dykes, I believe, did it
Spike Dykes,
2 or 3. So
Sonny Dykes'
basically, those
father.
2 coaches have all.
Yep.
Yeah, he's been rumored to go there as well, which I would not. I think SMU's a better job than Texas Tech. I think SMU is right there in Dallas and close enough to obviously Fort Worth, where you can just recruit like that. Like the Metroplex is one of the best places in the country to recruit football players. So I don't know why he'd leave to go to Texas Tech. I wouldn't personally.
Because you're
but,
going to a major conference, although we don't know if it's going to stay a major conference or how it's going to be evaluated going forward. But it's been a major conference versus being this American conference. Now that they've lost those 3 schools and added the 6 that they added, which add nothing. I posted a video. You want to hear some numbers. So we know Cincinnati, UCF, Houston. We know what they bring to the table. Very respectable numbers against Power 5 competition. I think 16-16 against the Power 5, those 3 schools in the last 5 years. The 6 schools that the Americans adding are 4-39 against the Power 5. And most of those games have obviously been just complete blowouts.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess that'd be the case, but I still feel like if he just continues what he's doing at SMU, and with those schools leaving, that even, in my opinion, elevates SMU because you'll look even better. You'll be the prettiest girl. You'll be the prettiest ugly girl, I guess, is what I'll say. And you'll be able to probably have your pick of the litter of coaching jobs eventually if you just continue what you're doing. And also, like, this is the main question I was going to ask you. Like, if you had to rank the Texas Tech job just among Big 12 schools with the incoming teams and take out Oklahoma and Texas, is that like the second worst job in the conference?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I thought too, because obviously Kansas is by far the worst. It's not even a question. And then really the only debate I think you might be able to have is TCU or Kansas State, because I think that all the schools coming in are better than all those jobs.
Yes. Yeah, they for different reasons. They have, even though Texas Tech is in Texas, they're not coming anywhere close to getting the prime players in Texas. And Cincinnati, UCF, and Houston all have their, I don't know, they have a lot more cachet for different reasons.
Yeah, and out of all those teams coming in the Big 12, who do you think will fare the best? I got this question a while back on the Texas Post intro, and I thought UCF because they have the biggest alma mater or
alumni base,
graduates in the country, alumni base in the country, and I think that's really going to help. They have a lot of money. And obviously, if anyone's ever will look up their campus, it's one of the most beautiful campuses in the country. So I think you're going to get more recruits there with them coming into the Big 12. I think they're going to be able to potentially run the Big 12 if they get the right coach.
Yeah. So again, we did a ton of work on the expansion situation when it happened. And even before UCF went anywhere and all this was being conjectured on how much this could possibly blow up, I said, if I were the ACC, and even to a certain extent, people were talking outlandish things about the Big Ten going out to California and grabbing USC and all this sort of thing, that if I was the ACC in particular, or if I was the Big Ten and I was looking to just jump geography to go grab football programs that made sense, if I was the ACC especially, UCF would be my target, because I just cited the recruiting footprint's phenomenal. They're right in the middle of Florida, and the other programs in Florida aren't at a great place right now. And Disney and the size of they're in a major market, Orlando. That's fairly uncommon in college football. And again, with NIL, Disney, and they've proven that they're all in on football, and they do have this enormous alumni base that's one of the largest in the country. And they've proven over the last 4 or 5 years that they can compete at a national level. Yeah, UCF.
So that's who you'd go with out of the 4 that are coming in as well?
Yes.
And then this will be my second to last question. I have a fun one at the end. But if you were an AD, would you touch Art Briles or Hugh Freeze? Like, if I was an AD, I would consider Hugh Freeze over Art Briles for the simple fact. I mean, if you read in the allegations of all the stuff that went on at Baylor, it's pretty sickening. And I would not touch Art Briles. Hugh Freeze, I mean, hookers on your phone that you're employed, with this school, and you're using it through that phone that they're paying for is stupid. But I have a feeling there's a lot of coaches doing that stuff on their private phone.
Yeah, it's kind of his own business kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it depends on who you are. If, there's a reason Liberty grabbed Hugh Freeze because they got a high-end coach from a football standpoint, but he had to be marginalized because of his conduct, so they could grab him. But if you're LSU, you don't need Hugh Freeze. Like, I'm not going after Hugh Freeze or Art Briles if I'm a high-end football program. I'm not going after, based on what you just said, and having similar thoughts about it, I'm not going after Art Briles regardless. But even Hugh Freeze, why does LSU need Hugh Freeze or USC a job of that caliber?
Yeah. I was thinking more of the Texas Tech opening because the AD of Texas Tech was just asking about Art Briles, and he gave a roundabout answer, basically didn't say yes or no. And I think Art Briles would take the job, but I think he'd do well too because he's a good coach. But that is some muddy and dangerous water, in my opinion, to go into.
Yeah. How do we know that Hugh Freeze is really that good of a football coach anyway? He cheated to get the players that he got at Ole Miss. And so in terms of running a program on the straight and narrow and winning, he hasn't necessarily achieved that. All right, Matthew, I appreciate the call. I'm going to keep moving here.
Okay. Yep. Have a good night.
Thanks. All right, let's take these calls here at the Voice of College Football. Appreciate you being on the line. Who's up?
Hey, Mark, this is Ben.
Hey, Ben.
I want to start and put you on the defensive right away.
All right.
How dare you, Mark? How dare you put Oklahoma above Michigan in your ranking? What defense do you have for yourself to do that?
What defense do I have? Well, who is Michigan beaten?
Western Michigan. They have beaten Michigan. Michigan's beaten Western Michigan, Washington, NIU is whatever, but Rutgers, Wisconsin.
You don't have
Nebraska.
to read through the entire. You don't have to read through the entire. I know who Michigan's beaten. It's a bit rhetorical, but Washington. Did you actually state Washington? You made that statement. That's part of your.
Well,
argument?
I'm just saying. Well, who has Texas? I mean, who is Oklahoma beating other than Texas?
Well, other than Texas, so we do include Texas. So start right there. Unless Michigan.
Who do you think their number one win is? What's their best win?
Unless Wisconsin continues to improve, and at that point, I will continue to reevaluate the wins and losses every week as I do, and so that's becoming a better looking win. Although let's pump the brakes also on Wisconsin. That's Michigan's best win by far. Is Wisconsin. Wisconsin's 4-3. They just beat Army by 6 points last Saturday. Like, it's not that where Texas is a good football team. Texas, we would have a good argument over whether Texas would beat Michigan. Michigan barely beat Rutgers. Look at how bad like the teams that Oklahoma's, albeit this Kansas game, but they won the game by 12 points at the end.
But if you were going to go with that logic, Oklahoma barely beat almost all 6 of the teams they played this year.
True. Yeah, they've both. I am going to stack up Oklahoma's beaten better teams than Michigan. That's the bottom line right there. Has Michigan been more dominant?
Here's my point. All right, from the eye test, Michigan I think has been more dominant. Other than a couple games, Michigan's been far more dominant than Oklahoma. But then my biggest point is, if you're looking at, eye test, I think Michigan looks better on the field, game to game. I mean, other than a couple big blowout wins Oklahoma has had, they haven't looked great. They haven't dominated the game. Then the other point is, if you're going to not go by eye test, and you're going to go strictly by resumes of teams, you can't count Texas above Western Michigan. Western Michigan has a better win. They have better wins than Texas. Western Michigan beat Pitt, who's also ranked in your top 25, and San Diego State, who's ranked in your top 25. Western Michigan, you got to look at them above Texas.
Western Michigan beat San Diego State?
Yep, San Diego State University and Pitt. They beat Pitt by 41 to 40, 44 to 41, and they beat San Diego State University 23 to 3.
Oh. Hang on. I may be wrong here. I'm just gonna double check myself.
Oh no, it's not San Diego State. My fault.
Exactly. Okay. I was just
it's
making
San
sure.
Jose State. Never mind. Okay, I take that back. Okay. That's San Jose
State's undefeated. Yes. Okay.
Yeah, San Diego State's undefeated. San Jose State.
Okay.
I mean.
All right. Yeah. Well, you understand that you got a big game against Michigan State this week. And if it really matters that much, that win will undoubtedly propel Michigan past Oklahoma because it's a resume.
It's going to be cleared up this week.
And Oklahoma plays Texas Tech. So Texas Tech is not a good team. They're a top 70 team in the country.
Yeah, no, and I agree. It'll be cleared up this week. We'll see. But I see your Ohio State bias coming in there, and I wanted to give you a hard time about it.
Well, that's all I need is more people giving me a hard time about my top 25.
No, you did a good job. I mean, you were wrong in one spot. That's all.
we all can make one mistake, right? All right. I appreciate you calling, Ben. Thanks, Ben. Just give me this one.
Take care, Mark. Bye.
All right. Well, have a good one. Everyone's entitled to one mistake. It took me until age, you fill in the blank, to make my first one, I guess. Welcome to the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line? Landfound, what's going on?
North Carolina lost that game. North Carolina State lost the game to Miami this past weekend because they failed to prepare for and adjust to Jalen Knighton. For those of you who don't know who Jalen Knighton is, he exploded against North Carolina after the starting running back went down. He starts against NC State. NC State doesn't prepare for him. He explodes again. He wins ACC honors for, I believe, running back of the week or player of the week even. I'm not even sure. So North Carolina State lost that game. The idea that Manny Diaz has now turned the corner and changed the trajectory of his career and this season is ludicrous, misguided, and delusional at best. Pittsburgh, before I get to Pittsburgh, Manny Navarro Athletic reported from the weekly press conference that the Canes do with Manny Diaz, reporting that Manny Diaz said that he won't give 25 scholarships to high school players this year and subsequent years because the landscape of college football has changed with the transfer portal or something to that effect. No, coach, you're going to have a bad recruiting class and you're trying to save the recruiting class by bringing in these kids from the transfer portal. You've had success there and you're going to ride that. So let's not try to cover up what's happening this season and the poor recruiting class that you will have. Pittsburgh just needs to stay on course, prepare for this running back, and they start off the week as an 11-point favorite. They should beat Miami this week. Just prepare, keep attacking this defense. It boggles my mind that NC State didn't foresee, not Jalen Knighton, fine, you overlook it, but you've got a talented roster. You're going to the Miami at 7:30 at night. It's an ACC game. How do you not see that this has upset written all over it, Coach? It's a division game. You're 5-1. You're ranked. It's probably the best NC State has ever done in their whole entire lives. And you lose this game to a crippled and hurting Miami. It boggles my mind. Let me make my stance clear. I'm rooting for Miami to lose. I'm a Miami Hurricane fan. The more we lose, the quicker we get this guy out of here and we can move on. I'm going to hang up now and I'm going to listen to you. Thank you for your time, Mark, as always.
Thank Landfound. Appreciate you. Thanks for the call. Well, Vegas had a pretty good read on this game. They certainly did make NC State some kind of enormous favorite against Miami. So they were only a 2.5 point favorite against Miami on the road. So I didn't make the prediction. I did not, but I certainly had it in my head to pull the trigger and take Miami with the upset because I could see that coming as well. But I did not. I played it safe, took NC State. But I only have one response to that, and that's Dave Doran. Dave Doran. I posted 2 videos about Dave Doran's failures at NC State. Now, he's got a pretty good football program, and he's got a pretty good football team right now, but he certainly has not played well against decent competition throughout his stay at NC State, which is now 9 years and running. He has built his win-loss record on the likes of William and Mary and Old Dominion in those schools. If you really look into what he's accomplished or not accomplished at NC State, it's pretty darn weak. All right, people keep calling, and I keep saying we've only going to take a couple calls here. Welcome to the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Hello, Mark. It's George in Portland.
George, what's going on?
I was trying to talk serious, like, I didn't really have anything to say today. I was just trying to get through. It was quite a challenge.
You were calling just to get through, but have nothing to say? And I just made the statement a few minutes ago that I was only going to take 2 more calls. And now this is like the 3rd one.
I know. I saw that as a challenge to get in there somehow.
A challenge when I only want 2 more calls.
Yeah, I'm like, can I get in there? Ask me a question. I'm here for you.
I will be taking calls. I don't want to ask any more questions. I want to wrap the show up.
I know you got to go.
We will be back on Thursday. You can think of something to say before then.
I predict Florida beats Georgia by 1 point.
Okay. Can't wait for that one.
All right, that's all I have.
If that happens, George, I'll be a happy guy.
I know.
Because there'll be a lot to talk about. Too. That's why I'll be happy. Thanks, George. See ya.
Finally, yeah.
Okay, last 2 calls of the night. Let's get them in. Here at the Voice of College Football.
Hey, Mark, it's J-Dub calling from Iowa. How are you doing this evening?
I'm doing well. What's going on?
Well, I'm sorry about that Michigan fan having to call in and give you a hard time. He's one of those Wolverine fans that think they're truly a true blue blood school, even though they only won 2 AP national championships since 1936. But you got to excuse them. I don't like the old, well, they beat them, and so therefore that means they're better than them. If you use that, for example, Mississippi State beat Texas A&M. Texas A&M beat Alabama. Alabama beat Mississippi State 49-9. Shouldn't Mississippi State have therefore beaten Alabama? I mean,
there you go.
You can't do it like that. It doesn't work that way.
Anyone who starts in on that with me, I always say, go ahead, start the argument, because I can play that game as well as anyone. I can string together all sorts of scenarios across the country. If that's what you want to do, we can do that.
I happened to have the pleasure of being on the sideline Saturday in Ames and watched Iowa State play as they are capable of playing and beat Oklahoma State in what was really a very well played game.
Yeah.
And I wonder what your thoughts were about, not necessarily about Iowa State, but just about the Big 12 in total. Can somebody, Iowa State, Oklahoma State, Baylor, can somebody get Oklahoma. Iowa State's got Texas at home. They beat the Longhorns 3 times in a row. They're going to Oklahoma. They're 2-3 their last 5 against Oklahoma. That includes a 1-point loss 2 years ago when Mark Campbell decided to go for 2 instead of kicking for overtime in the waning seconds, and Iowa State lost 42-41. The time before that, they went to Norman. They beat Baker Mayfield 38-31. So Iowa State can win in Norman. I just wondered, what's your thoughts? Can somebody get Oklahoma out of the Big 12 championship?
Well,
for the title?
What the way I had this played out before the season started was I picked Oklahoma to win the regular season, have the best record going into the Big 12 championship game at 11-1, and then I picked Iowa State to pull off the upset. So that's what I'm still hoping for, just to validate my prediction. I think Iowa State, they got off to a slow start with the narrow win against Northern Iowa, and then of course the losses against Iowa and Baylor. But when you look at the composition of the team, they're senior laden. They've got so much experience and guys that have played in the games that you're talking about. Many of them. Charlie Kohler, a tight end, best tight end in the league, if not the nation. Xavier Hutchinson made a ton of big plays in that game that you were on the sideline for. Brock Purdy at quarterback. Hopefully that he's learned his lesson from some mistakes and a major faux pas in the red zone in the Big 12 championship game last year. And I just felt as though, in the best running back, arguably in the nation, that they had the talent, experience, and also the chip on their shoulder to come back and make it work and kind of fight for and say, hey, we're together one more time and break through this Oklahoma string of championships. So that's what I was envisioning coming into this season. It didn't start out well, but now they're starting to get it together. So,
and
either Oklahoma has to
get defense ranking.
And just one final thought to answer your question is that for anyone to get Oklahoma, obviously it has to either happen. If it happens during the regular season, then it's going to have to happen in the championship game anyway, or it could just happen to an undefeated Oklahoma team in the Big 12 title game. And I think all sorts of teams could do it. I think Oklahoma State and Iowa State are the 2 best teams to do it. I've thought that most of the season.
Iowa State's got the number 3 defense in the country. And here's a stat that maybe a lot of people don't know. And their last, again, this counts the Oklahoma State game in which they gave up a passing touchdown. In their last 11 games, Iowa State's defense has allowed a total of 3 touchdowns in the second half of their last 11 games. So it's not been a defensive issue for the Cyclones. It's been, can Purdy not make the boneheaded play at the wrong moment? And can they survive some special teams miscues, which is what hurt them against Iowa and what cost them the game at Baylor. They beat Baylor. They shut Baylor out in the second half. If it wasn't for a kick return and a long punt return, they would have defeated Baylor. I mean, that be, woulda, coulda, shoulda. I understand.
Yeah.
But I think the Cyclones are poised. I think they're poised. They're in position to knock off Oklahoma. And they're in exactly the right spot because nobody's paying attention to them anymore. And that might have been the best thing that happened to them.
I agree. And I still have confidence that they can do it.
Thanks for taking my call, Mark. Thanks for taking my call. I know you want to go. I appreciate you having me on.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. All right. I appreciate everyone calling, but I've said like 8 times, please nobody else call. And I'm getting more calls. All right. I'm taking these 2 calls. So there's a third person and there's actually more than that. I can only see 3. So 2 more calls quickly here at the Voice of College Football. Yes.
Yeah. How you doing?
I'm good. Who am I speaking with?
Good. Yeah, I'm Travis. I'm calling from Columbus. I just have a couple things just keeping me up at night. Some scenarios that could play out. I kind of want to get your
let's make sure you get your sleep
that.
First and foremost.
What's that?
Well, let's make sure you get your sleep first and foremost.
It's keeping me up. All right, I'm gonna throw a scenario at you and just tell me where you think Ohio State would land. Cincy goes undefeated. Oregon wins the Pac-12. Oklahoma wins the Big 12. Bama beats Georgia. Where does that leave Ohio State? That scenario very well could play out.
Sure. Well, most likely they're out. So, okay.
What scenario?
George is in. Under that scenario, George is in. Okay. Oklahoma, you said won the Big 12. How many losses do they have?
They win straight out.
Okay,
Oklahoma runs the table.
So they're in. Oklahoma's in. Georgia's in.
Oregon.
And you've got Oregon winning the Pac-12 with one loss, and so you got to make the decision between Oregon getting in with the head-to-head, which I would believe that they would honor the head-to-head. Anytime anyone anytime anyone asks me to play out these scenarios, I can tell you what I would do, but what the committee's going to do, they'll do whatever they want. They can justify anything. They can justify any decision they want to make.
Yeah. And then the whole Cincy thing. I mean, look at the Cincinnati schedule is just straight hot garbage.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's horrible.
What Luke Fickell has done is that absolutely incredible, and I love him. But would they put? I mean, the only data point you have is what Cincy played Indiana and we played Indiana, which I was at the game in Bloomington getting rained on Saturday night. I mean, that's kind of the only comparison you have. And I mean, man, look at the difference. I mean, if you saw Cincinnati and Ohio State, who do you think's the better team playing Indiana?
Ohio State's a better team than Cincinnati, period.
Absolutely. But does the committee say they ran the table, they're undefeated, we have to put them in?
Well, no. UCF ran the table twice and didn't get in. Cincinnati ran the table last year, did not get in. They don't have to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's there's still a lot of football to be played, but I mean, I just look at Cincy's schedule, not great. Oregon could win out. Oklahoma could win out. And Bama, I mean, Bama can beat Georgia. It's Bama. I mean, you know what I mean? You can't just count them out. Yeah, Georgia's got a great defense and they're playing well, but you can't just say, well, no, Georgia's going to win. Bama very easily could win that game. That is a toss-up. So it just worrisome. I could see it happening. And, you know, I'd be crushed again to be in that number 5 spot like we were a few years back, you know, just right there on the bubble. And, you know,
Ohio State lost the worst the worst game that they could have lost. That was not the game to lose. They needed to lose to Michigan State or somebody.
Yeah. It just sucks having, you know, Stroud. You got a guy that's never thrown a pass in his life in college football. Comes in, first game of his life, he has to throw a football, has to go on the road in conference at night, then come home to play Oregon, which is a very good team. Still, you're a kid. You've never thrown a pass. You're in your second game. And then your third game is Tulsa. Not great. I believe they might have – did they play for their conference championship last year?
Well, the conference did not have a championship game last year, but they were right there. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I knew they were kind of decent. So that it comes into his third game against, you know, a decent team. And, you know, usually you get these warm-ups, Youngstown State, Bowling Green, you know, you get a couple, 3 of those, and then, you know, we have our games. But, you know, the way CJ Stroud is coming into form right now is absolutely unbelievable. And I was one of those people that was sitting in there saying, give this kid time. You can't just throw a kid in the mix like this and expect him to look like Justin Fields. It's just not going to happen. And just the way he looked in person on Saturday night was just unreal. If he keeps playing like that, it's just scary what they can do.
Well, I
Still worried
appreciate
about
the
the
call.
defense a little bit. I feel like we can be exposed, but appreciate it, Mark. Thank you. Love your content.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Have a good night.
Bye.
All right. So I said like 6 phone calls ago that I was taking 2 more phone calls. So I apologize to the people on the line, but hopefully you heard me say, because we were going to get off at 8:30 and it's a half hour later. I want to honor these super chats coming in. So we got Obey Trey. If I do good deeds like giving you super chats, maybe my Wolverines will win this weekend. Go Blue. So Obey Trey, just remember, Michigan wins this weekend. But you're going to have to do this again next weekend. You're going to have to close out the season with these good deeds. Obey Trey, thank you so much for that. Appreciate that. And also, we've got, where is it? There was another super chat. Hopefully I can retrieve it. It was in green. It came in actually from Bo Weevil. So I don't know if I can post that to the screen. I've got it here. There we go. Bo Weevil. And Dabo has 85 spots already filled. 85 scholarships for Dabo. Don't know what you're getting at there, Bo, but I think that had to do with the Manny Diaz comment about, really nothing that Manny Diaz says in trying to defend the current recruiting class flies, because he's just, he's spinning things as he is apt to do. And when you're, whatever they are right now, 3 and 4, then that's what you have to do to try to keep your job and spin him a bad situation into a good one. Although we did help himself in a tangible way this weekend, beating a good NC State team. Appreciate everybody being here at the Voice of College Football. Thank you so much. Apparently, people on the phone lines are not listening to me. They want to talk to me on the phone, but they don't listen the rest of the time. But I appreciate everybody being here. We will definitely be here with a call-in show on Thursday night, maybe sooner, but definitely on Thursday night here at the Voice of College Football, and appreciate everybody being here. My conference power rankings, the Big Ten's released. I will produce the SEC, the ACC, the Big 12, and even the Pac-12, and some other content on my mind as well to get out there for all of you right here at the Voice of College Football. We need sponsors. Hit me up at MarkRogersTV at Gmail, and also just let people out there know that we are here talking college football with you every day. We will see you very soon. I think the next time we're live is 1 o'clock Eastern on Tuesday, Miami Channel with the Wholesome One. 1 o'clock Eastern, Miami Channel, the Wholesome One. Then also at 5:30 with Corey Bratta right here talking Iowa